Up everybody, August 28th, 2025 on a Thursday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q. And what's up, y'all? We back on the corner. So it's Thursday. Got a couple clips to play for you guys because on Thursday we usually look at a little bit of news. So I got a couple clips up here. Okay, I didn't know Fox Philadelphia covered it either. All right, let me just go through the clips with you guys. So let's make sure you guys are good, grounded. What's up? Welcome to the corner. Welcome to the daily live stream. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Hit that like button as you come in. Say what's up. Say where you're watching from. So let's go through the clips, right? We got Charlie Kirk first up on the list. Shout out to Charlie Kirk. Trans shooter. I don't know why he said trans shooter. Maybe this is a fact I don't know yet. Plus anti-Christian hate crime confirmed. So that's definitely referring to the mass shooting that was taking place in Minnesota during Catholic Mass. We'll take a look at that, and I have a couple clips that are pretty congruent to that. We'll switch gears and go to Face the Nation. 2 children killed, 17 injured in Minneapolis Catholic school shooting, police say. And then we'll switch gears and we'll go over to Bakari Sellers. Shout out to him, CNN host anchor, where he says, after the school shooting in Minneapolis, are thoughts and prayers enough? So Scott Jennings is also on that panel. I'm not sure if Abby's there, but we'll take a listen to them. Then we'll switch gears and go over to Forbes breaking news. Pam Bondi announces guilty plea for Sinaloa cartel El Mayo. So we're gonna take a look at that. That was 2 days ago. I wanted to cover that actually a day or two ago, but with me being like up and down sick and just recovering, it was a lot last week. So now we're getting back into the swing of things, so I appreciate you guys being patient with me. We're going to switch gears, and then we're going to jump over to CNN, where it says the judge sets Friday hearing in Trump's attempt to fire federal governor. So we know there's some things going on with President Trump and the federal governor. And then we'll go over to John Amachukawa, who says Al Sharpton is heated that Trump is saving Black America. Dude, I always call him John Am. So if you guys get a chance, go over to his channel. He has 71.6K subscribers. I mean, this clip, I wanted to play it because I thought John did a great job at capturing it. Al Sharpton is heated that Trump is saving Black America, all America, whatever. There's a lot of people heated, but we're going to take a look at that. All right, guys. So first up on the list, Mr. Charlie Kirk. Trans shooter plus anti-Christian hate crime confirmed. Let's take a listen.
Welcome back, everybody. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. That is the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. We have a great guest right now and a wonderful friend, Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles is with us. Michael, it is a very disturbing day here as we learn of what has happened in Minneapolis. People are saying it's confirmed, and I think that's right. The Catholic school shooter is transgender, which does matter, by the way, as we're talking about the broader policy implications of this. Michael, you are Mr. Catholic. You are Catholic number 1 on our guest roster here. What is your reaction? This is a terrible day and obviously a demonic and spiritual attack against these now young martyrs of the church.
Well, obviously the first thing we'll do is pray, of course. A strange coincidence here. I was on a conference call with a Catholic organization when this news broke. I wasn't following the news. I checked my email, and I got an email from my personal website from a guy, and he said, hey, I'm in Minneapolis, I'm law enforcement, military, there's been a shooting at this Catholic school during Mass, and the shooter was trans and killed himself. He said, can you please talk about this? I did not run with that, and I don't even mean to say that as though it's a confirmed fact now on your show, because I just said I don't know, and this is before any of this was really being reported. Now you're seeing the start to come out, possible identity of the shooter, possible video of the shooter, possible manifesto of the shooter. I watched what is purportedly the video released by the shooter, and the first reaction is it seems so clearly demonic. The kind of language that's being used, the way that it's being spoken. I'm not one of these people who sees demons hiding under every rock. But if you acknowledge that there's evil in the world, then you have to acknowledge there is a personality to evil, and there's more in heaven and earth than is dreamt up in our philosophies. So, some of what has come out of this purported video is a little firing line, like a target with Christ's head on the top of it. Some of it is blasphemous, terrible language. And then, of course, the targeting of a church or a school, not only a school, but a school with mass, not only mass, but a mass full of little kids. If this is not demonic, I don't know what is.
So what you're seeing up on screen is a picture of the mass shooter in his video with a very detailed image of the church and a knife over it. He intentionally targeted a Catholic church. He intentionally targeted kids at mass. He intentionally targeted young kids that were Catholic and Christian. Michael, I mean, this is an attack on Christianity. The media likely will just kind of glaze over that and make it all about guns. What is your take on this deliberate,
it's not just about guns,
Christian hate crime? And I don't like using that word. We are in the midst of a spiritual war.
Yes, a line that I don't really like using, but is apt, is that...
Mind you, Charlie Kirk makes a great point here, because he says the mainstream media is going to make this all about guns, but this is actually also about a spiritual war, which I agree with him. It's not going to be just about guns, but that's what mainstream media is going to make it about.
It's always the ones you most expect. It's always the ones you most expect. So in this case, Christians are being targeted while they're at prayer, while they're the most innocent people, while they're little kids who don't have personal sin. That in itself is horrifying, but you expect it in the sense that all sin is a turning away from God. All crime, all violations of the moral order are expressing a contempt for God and a self-deification.
President Trump makes healthcare affordable again. His 2017 executive order expanded access to truly affordable group plans to all Americans. This is, I think, the mayor or some leadership. This is, I think, the mayor or some leadership saying no more prayers. By the way, this is what the left is saying. I want you to respond to this. They said, if prayers worked, these kids would not be dead. This is the Democrat mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, or Free. Play cut 410.
What?
Don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Don't just pray, they say, and I get that he's upset, but Brian Krasenstein, a leading Democrat influencer, says, quote, praying is the problem here, not the solution. Wow. People use prayer instead of action. If prayer worked, a house of prayer wouldn't have just experienced this tragedy. That is the modern left. I want you guys to read that.
Okay, one, that's not
saying
true.
Saying that prayer is the problem.
And two, that's ridiculous.
By the way, prayer leads you to action, but prayer is not a guarantee of a covering. Prayer is first and foremost an act of worship and an act of contrition to an almighty God that is the author of life. Michael Knowles.
Both statements are absolutely vomit-inducing. These people, if they weren't so profoundly ignorant, would merit even more of our anger. But let's just follow their ideas to their conclusion. What they're saying is, don't pray. Prayer is stupid. Let's make fun of these dead Christian kids and their families for praying. What idiots they are. They shouldn't pray. What's the alternative?
Let's get mad and go out and kill people.
Quite clearly, is that we just need to elect progressive politicians and enact progressive policies, because that's going to lead to progressive action to solve all of these problems and to prevent mass shootings. He's a Democrat mayor. They're in a Democrat state. There's a Democrat governor. They're full of Democrat legislators. They have all of that. How come they didn't fix it? Huh? You know, if the point is that you're wasting all your time praying when instead you should be electing Democrats so that we can implement our wise policies, well, you know what? You all were elected and you didn't figure it out either. And this is one of the errors of liberalism. You know, liberalism says no gods, no kings, only men. We are going to, through our rationality, create a perfect society. We're going to ignore original sin. Original sin is not real. We're going to live in this perfected utopia. That hasn't worked out very well. And the evidence is we live in a largely secular society, an extremely liberal society, a society where we're highly technocratic and we implement all sorts of wonky policies. And guess what? They still haven't extirpated original sin. So what the Christians say is, they recognize rightly, we can't save ourselves. That's an ancient heresy. It's called Pelagianism, and it's reified in modernity in liberalism. But it's not going to work. You're not going to create a utopia here on Earth because we're fallen and we have concupiscence and evil just exists, okay? So in addition to doing what we can, taking appropriate and prudent political actions, we're going to pray to God because God made us, God sustains us, God is being himself, God saves us if we are to be saved, and so we're going to rely on him.
Amen.
The liberals and the moderns and the secularists have no such humility, so they become even angrier, but it's an impotent kind of anger because none of their policies work either.
And let me just say that
Forget courses, forget gurus, just watch us build the whole thing live.
if I were to go, I would love to go praying. Praying is one of the highest acts. I mean, these kids should still be alive. I'm not trivializing their death,
Yeah,
unlike the
definitely
Democrats
not.
that are spitting on their
That's a
grave
good point.
and humiliating their legacy. But Jesus Christ our Lord prayed before he went to the cross. He prayed to the Father. And there is supernatural power in prayer. It's a mystery as to how God dispenses his grace, or healings happen from prayer.
And I know why. That's why Charlie gave the disclaimer. He said, "I'm in no way, shape, or form trying to downplay what has happened." That's why I said, yeah, that's the best way to go. Of course, thinking about an adult, that's not the best way to go for a child. That act of horrific terrorism, basically, that's domestic terrorism that happened during Catholic Mass at a school. That is literally atrocious. And that is, the person took their own life. If not, I'm pretty sure they would have more than likely gotten the death penalty, which, if I'm honest with you, at that point, it would have been deserved. This was just horrific. I mean, it talks about how the parents were trying to cover the children, the older children were trying to cover the younger children, and it's just, it's just pretty sad.
Clarity, wisdom, interventions. We don't know when and how God does it, because God is the sovereign being over all. But prayer is a real thing. It's not just a chatter to yourself. It's a divine communique to the heavens. And to kind of trivialize it and say, prayer is just you talking to yourself, or prayer is the problem. Well, that is if you do not believe in a personal intercessory God. How are you as a Catholic thinking about this sort of attack against a Catholic church? And should we remember these young kids as martyrs?
Well, certainly they're martyrs. I mean, if to be a martyr is to die because someone hates the faith, and so obviously this person's, whether or not the manifestos and the videos are true, it's clear enough from the action that this person was committing a crime against people specifically for believing in Christ. So they certainly are martyrs, and martyrs go all the way back. Cardinals in the church wear red slippers because they're following in the footsteps of the martyrs, and we believe that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, which is soft consolation in a moment like this of such immense and terrible grief. But this is a consistent theme. The devil knows his enemy, and evil people throughout all of history in all sorts of different political circumstances have attacked the church, and the church remains. And the church not only remains standing, the church advances, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. It's no coincidence, I think. It's no mere coincidence that this horrific attack occurs at the same time that we're seeing all these sorts of headlines about the advance of Christianity in America, specifically Catholicism, but other religious traditions as well. A final turning away from the popular new atheism, the decline in religion. Now you see a hockey stick in adult conversion specifically. All the right enemies are horrified by this, and to see the political order tolerate such spiritual evil, but also psychological disorder. This seems to be the culmination of a long period of us pretending that crazy things are normal, and that can have disastrous results.
And that normal things are crazy.
Michael, why are people going back to church?
People are going back to church because the atheism ran out of steam. That's the first reason. There are 100 different reasons, but the first reason is, especially for some of your young, hip, cool Zoomer viewers, you don't remember the dog days of Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris. There was this time in the 2000s when because of a publishing phenomenon, everyone thought that the atheists were the smart people and the religious people were the dumb people. Never mind that statistically every single intelligent person who's ever lived has believed in God. Never mind that some random journalist is not actually smarter than Thomas Aquinas, for instance. That's just what it felt like at the time. And the atheism ran its course, and now it's over. And it's over because people got really depressed. As all of this secularism and atheism was advancing, what did you also see? You saw declining happiness for both men and women, especially for women. You saw the skyrocketing rates of antidepressant drugs, also mostly for women, but for men as well. You saw increased depression, including among teenagers. You saw family breakdown. You saw all manner of social disorder. And you said, if this is progress, show me regress. If this is enlightenment, give me some darkness. I don't know, because this isn't real. And so people finally faced with the eternal questions again are saying, all right, well, what have other people thought about this? And I think now we're seeing all the smart people are returning to religion because of at least one basic fact, which is we can know that God exists. And smart people going all the way back to Aristotle and Plato have known for a fact that God exists. And God has a character, and God reveals himself to us. And if you're curious at all, if you're humble at all, you got to learn more.
And the younger people lived through one of the cruelest social experiments in the history of the world, which was COVID and lockdowns. But let's ask specifically about Catholicism. Young people are going to the Catholic Church. More Americans are joining the Catholic Church than leaving for the first time in decades. Why is this happening, Michael?
Well, again, I was kind of making the point about the new atheism, that things had gotten so low that the only way you could go was up. That's a little bit true with Catholicism. Obviously, Catholicism is the biggest religion in the world, a billion Catholics, but still, Catholicism, especially in America, had been kind of weakened, and now you're seeing a return to that. This was predicted not only by the modern mackerel snappers like me, this was actually predicted by Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy in America, probably the most famous and most incisive analysis of what America looks like. And he predicted that even though America seems like a totally Protestant nation, he said over time, this is in the 19th century, that Americans were going to trend one of two ways. They were either going to give up religion entirely, or they were going to become Catholic. And his reasoning is kind of interesting. He said it's because America is really democratic, lowercase d. And in democratic nations, people have this inclination to throw off all authority and do whatever they want for themselves and believe vox populi, vox Dei, the voice of the people is the voice of God. So those guys are going to trend toward atheism. But the ones who don't give up authority, they're going to trend toward a religion that is universal, that is uniform, that makes the same claims of all members everywhere, where there aren't stratas and hierarchies, where it makes a claim that there is a universal church. And he said, weird as it sounds, because I know this country's full of Protestants, he said, I think Americans are going to trend toward Catholicism over time.
The future of your business.
That trend seems to be very true.
You get advanced AI capable.
I would say we've seen I know personally, just watching, I've seen a couple of people that just, were just saying they were flat out Christians and that they had changed over to Catholicism, and a lot of that was due to reverence. Mainly reverence is the I can honestly say that's the leading reason why I've seen a lot of people, at least on the side that I've seen, not just on YouTube, but even personally. It was just crazy that when they said that, I actually thought about it, and I said, yeah, that is kind of true. I've seen that trend. And a lot of them just said the reverence for the scriptures. I've even seen a lot of Christians go over to the Calvinist side. But then, I've also seen that in the opposite effect as well. A lot of Calvinists come over to just the non-denominational. But yeah, I would definitely say as far as the Christians going towards like a rise in Catholicism, or leading towards it, I've actually seen that, so I can actually confirm that. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually thought about it, not to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go find a diocese. I didn't go that far, but I just thought to myself, like, I could just respect, the reverence, or the time that maybe they'll spend on liturgy, in scripture, and just how they treat the traditions, and just the sacraments. Like sometimes I say when you're in a non-denominational church, if you grew up in a denominational church, you can miss those things sometimes. Now, I didn't grow up in a Catholic church, but I visited Catholic churches all the time because I had friends that went there. But I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and then I also have visited like Presbyterian churches, Episcopal churches. Like I've been in Methodist churches, so I've kind of been around like really denominational churches. But I guess you can say, as an adult attending church, getting into ministry, getting into like preaching and teaching, I've done more of that in a non-denominational setting. And I don't know why, but that's just the way that the Lord had it work out. But I would just say that when you are in a very heavy denominational setting, it can be intimidating sometimes, hard to learn even, because you're just so wrapped up into the tradition, into like the way of things, into the order of service. I feel like a lot can also get lost in that. So I would say that there's it's weird. It's a toss up, but yeah, in that sense, I did think about it because I could just see the reverence, just like with Calvinists, I could see that they have their whole scripture at an extremely high regard, and that was something I really respected about Calvinists. So I could understand that drift towards Catholicism that they were talking about, because just, the reverence in general that I think sometimes you don't really get in the non-denominational church setting. All right, guys, we're going to switch gears and go to Face the Nation. All right, still congruent with the last clip. We got 2 children killed, 17 injured in Minneapolis Catholic school shooting, police say.
The absolute pain of this situation.
Meg Oliver, this is CBS News 24/7. We continue to follow breaking news from the scene of a mass shooting
Ernestine,
at
shout
a
out
church
to
in
you.
Minneapolis.
Thanks for stopping
The attack
by.
took place at the Annunciation Church, where students
Hit that
and
like
staff
button for
from
me,
the parish
guys.
school next door had gathered for morning mass to kick off the new school year. Police say a shooter dressed in all black arrived at the church and began firing into the church through windows at those who were praying inside.
During the mass, a gunman approached on the outside, on the side of the building, and began firing a rifle through the church windows towards the children sitting in the pews at the mass. Shooting through the windows, he struck children and worshipers that were inside the building. The shooter was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. This was a deliberate act of violence against innocent children and other people worshiping.
At least 17 people were injured, 14 of whom are children. 2 students were killed, 8 and 10 years old, and multiple are in critical condition. The gunman was reportedly found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. CBS News senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schechter, joins me now. The details coming out of this are just absolutely heartbreaking. An 8 and 10-year-old didn't make it. You've been following the very latest. What else do we know?
Well, we know that at least 10 children are in critical condition at this time, and we are awaiting news for more children to be released from the hospital. When it comes to the shooter, the gunman, we understand that the shooter's name was legally changed back in 2020 from Robert to Robin Westman, and it appears that the shooter's mother had worked at the school in previous years. So we're piecing together a connection. Law enforcement tell us that this shooter appears to have had a grievance related to the school, but those details are very vague right now. We're still waiting to pin that down. There are social media videos that have been posted that appear to have been posted by the gunman prior to this attack, and our CBS News Confirmed team is reviewing all of that. So this is very fluid right now in terms of all the information that's coming in.
As you try to piece that connection together, any idea whether he was targeting the church or the school, or do we not know that yet?
We don't have that pinned down, but certainly the messages were of a suicidal nature, showing signs of mental health struggles, and really grievances, not necessarily just towards the school, but towards different populations. So we are still working through, there's quite a bit of material online that we're going through right now.
And what happens next in this investigation?
Well, of course, the shooter's laptop, cell phones, any electronic device that was used will be looked through, will be recorded. Any interaction that this person had with others, did other people know about this, and did other people aid this attack? We're also waiting to hear on where those weapons were obtained. This person was armed with 3 weapons, including a semi-automatic rifle, which the shooter used in this attack, but the shooter also used 2 other weapons. So this was absolutely premeditated, and the police, you heard there say this was premeditated and targeted attack.
Yeah, absolutely devastating. Anna Schechter, as always, thank you so much. We want to bring in CBS News correspondent Nydia Cavazos, who is in Minneapolis at the scene. She joins us on the phone. Nydia, can you paint a picture for us? What are you hearing? What are you seeing there?
We were just a couple of blocks away from where the shooting took place at the church, and what we are witnessing at this moment is still a very, very heavy presence of police officers. We are seeing FBI agents, HSI, we see state troopers, and it's just rows and rows of blocks that these officers are at this moment. Now, earlier this morning when we arrived to the scene, we were witnessing as some of the parents were carrying their children out of the area where the school and the church is located. Their tiny arms were wrapped around their parents, and the look on their faces, the expressions of these kids, paint the picture of what exactly occurred. Some of these children were in tears, and their parents were immediately taking them out and walking them through the streets and the sidewalks of these neighborhoods. Now, earlier today, we also spoke to one of the neighbors whose house is just right next to the school, and he said he heard the shots and ran toward this church and immediately started trying to help out the children, but he describes what he first saw. He thought there was a really quiet scene, and this is because the children were barricaded within the church. Police officers did arrive, and he had to step away from the scene, but there are so many neighbors here who, again, it's the look on their faces that was very shocking, and really paints a picture of what's going on here at this moment.
Nydia, with all those details and seeing all those people leaving school and all those parents holding their kids a little tighter today, thank you. For more, I want to bring in Tim Gallagher. He is a former FBI special agent and chief security officer for Nardello and Company. Tim, I just want to start with, when you're looking at these types of investigations, how does it differ when the suspect is dead versus being alive and under arrest?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Yes, law enforcement, the FBI working side by side with their colleagues in local law enforcement. There's still the same sense of urgency, right? Even though the shooter is deceased, you are still looking to put together the pieces of the puzzle. What happened? Who are they in touch with? What have they written? What did they write and then take down? Where were they in the days and hours leading up to the event? So there is still the same sense of urgency, and law enforcement is going to put the case together to paint the full picture. It just will not result in criminal charges. However, the full picture needs to be painted.
Any difficulty when multiple law enforcement agencies are all working together?
No, there's no difficulty at all. It makes everything that much better. You see the concept in terrorism cases with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, where agencies work together side by side. When I ran the FBI office in Newark, New Jersey, there were literally 50 or 60 different agencies working under a roof on any given day, whether that be working terrorism or working crimes against children. It's all one team working on these types of matters to keep the public safe.
Tim, when you saw the first reports of this, what was going through your mind with your former expertise of covering several different things like this in the past?
Sure. You're looking at the reaction that was done immediately inside the church, which appears to have saved lives with children taking cover, children hiding, which follows the run, hide, fight training that is given, and then just the reaction. Law enforcement was there in minutes. Sometimes they arrive in minutes to have to interact with the killer and take the killer down. Here, the fact that law enforcement was there so quickly undoubtedly saved lives, but through rendering first aid and stopping the bleed for those who've been wounded.
we heard from one of the witnesses who told our local affiliate there that they plan and they train for these types of incidents at the school every month, but they've never done that kind of training at the church. How disorienting
because they don't expect it. It's so horrific and disgusting.
Do you think they still knew where to go? Because we know they were hiding all over.
Even though at some point we know we did see a rise in this stuff happening in the nation, right? We did see people randomly going into church and doing shootings and, specifically targeting different churches and different spiritual and religious gatherings. So it's just disgusting because unfortunately I can look at it and say, yeah, I can see why they might not have prepared for it in the church, because they're thinking, surely we could see a school attack, but someone wouldn't. And yeah, someone would.
Sure. So it is a fact that active shooter training is necessary. And it has to be done in a way that it doesn't scare the children into thinking that, hey, we could be next, but they have muscle memory, like if this happens, what can we do? That training is adaptive to no matter where you are, whether it's in school, a house of worship, or public transportation or a movie theater, right? That the atmosphere of where you're going to be will be different as far as where the exits are, but the training itself and what you need to do to take cover and to hide or to get out of there. Those basic concepts do transfer.
All right, Tim Gallagher, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us now is CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cortez. Nancy, thanks for being here. How is the White House responding to the shooting?
Well, Meg, we just watched a few minutes ago as the flags here on the White House grounds were lowered to half staff, and the president issued a proclamation ordering all government buildings to lower their flags through the remainder of the week to half staff. He also issued this proclamation honoring the victims of this tragic shooting. And we know that he has spoken to the governor of Minneapolis and he's spoken to the FBI, but notable that he has had a conversation with Governor Walz, the governor of Minnesota rather, because the two of them haven't spoken much over the past few months. As you recall, Governor Walz was on the Democratic ticket that ran against Trump in the most recent election. And they didn't speak after a politically motivated shooting in Minnesota earlier this summer, but they have connected today. And President Trump says he is going to continue to monitor the situation and is asking folks to keep the people of Minneapolis in their prayers.
Nancy, as the country mourns this latest school shooting, we know President Trump is hosting a meeting at the White House today regarding the conflict in Gaza. What more can you tell us about those talks? What's the specific focus?
There are two main focuses of this meeting, Meg.
All right, so I'm gonna stop that there because they're gonna go more into that. So we just wanted to catch more about the shooting and the unfortunate events that took place in Minneapolis. Prayers out to the family because that's pretty disgusting. I hate school shootings, anything involving children. As I said in my last live stream when we were covering the 7 down in Alabama with the child sex trafficking ring, it can be pretty triggering for me. So, like I said, all my years of therapy and my relationship with Christ, I've done better. But it's like, yeah, things with children can be extremely triggering for me sometimes. So, we're done with that. Let's switch gears and go over to Bakari Sellers. But he's still talking about it a little bit here on the CNN panel. He says, after the school shooting in Minneapolis, are thoughts and prayers enough? So let's take a listen to this.
Welcome back. We've been following the latest developments from this morning's tragedy at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. 2 children were killed and pronounced dead at the scene. 3 adults and 14 other children were injured by gunfire. The children all were between the ages of 6 and 15, and 6 are believed to still be in critical condition. And like the other school shootings, too many that this country has become very familiar with, it was followed by a chorus of thoughts and prayers. But Minneapolis's mayor is fed up with that.
Don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Bakari Sellers and Scott Jennings are here with us now. Bakari, earlier in the show we played the soundbite from the principal who said, this African proverb, when you pray, move your feet. There are many people who want feet to move in the direction of actually addressing what's going on here, rather than just saying it's just something that happens here.
Yeah, but I think we're kind of past that. Most people realize that when you were able to kill 20 some odd young white children in Sandy Hook and nothing changed, that nothing was really going to fundamentally change in this country. This is another sad tragedy, but the problem is that there's an outrage from the right about Jacob Frey, and I'm not a huge Jacob Frey, mayor of Minneapolis. I'm not a huge fan, but he was right. The book of James teaches us that faith without works is dead. And so whether or not he was echoing that sentiment or echoing that scripture, I think that there are a lot of people who are tired of thoughts and prayers, because at the end of the day, thoughts and prayers ring hollow. At the end of the day, thoughts and prayers have led us to having more of these deaths, more of these shootings, more of these individuals who were killed inside of churches, inside of schools, or in pews.
And people who are I shouldn't say adjudicated, but people who have known mental illness are still able to very easily, it looks like, according to the police chief in Minneapolis recently, could just go in and get 3 guns and then use those guns to murder children in a school.
Yeah, I actually had a negative reaction to the mayor's statements today. I think it's wrong, frankly, to vilify or attack people of faith. You said thoughts and prayers ring hollow. I think thoughts and prayers are the most solid on days of tragedy for people who live their faith every day. And I think on a day like today, particularly in a church community, there are probably people praying harder for comfort today than they have ever prayed in their life. And so I think, and I've heard others on the left today go down this line of attack against people of faith, sort of denigrating the idea that they might want to pray today. And so I think his statements were misguided. The thing that struck me today, Abby, truthfully, when I was watching this unfold, was that the 2 little ones that died were 8 and 10. I have 7 and 9. Those are my 2 youngest. They turn 8 and 10 in a few days. And we could probably sit here and argue out all the issues of faith and transgenderism and all the other things that have been raised today, but it strikes me that none of us ever want to know the terror and the absolute empty hole that will never be filled that those parents of the 8 and 10-year-old are going to feel. And I just thought maybe tonight the most useful thing any of us can do to take 10 seconds and just sit quietly and be still and be quiet and think about those families, because they are never going to be the same, no matter what we say.
They aren't. And I think that this is, so many times I've sat in this chair all hours of the day and night, and it doesn't matter what time of day, what day of the week, there's another mass shooting in this country. There are people.
School shootings are out of control.
Chris Murphy, who represents
it's literally
Connecticut,
crazy.
where Sandy Hook happened. I remember when
only in America too. This is why it's so disgusting to me.
How could we allow this to happen again? It did many times since then, but Chris Murphy tonight was speaking with my colleague Anderson Cooper, and he actually points out something I don't think people have noticed. He says mass shootings have been going down, and here's what he's saying is why.
The rate of mass shootings and school shootings in this country is coming down, not going up. And it started coming down in 2022 when we passed the first significant anti-gun violence bill in 30 years. We now have proof of concept in this country that if you are more careful about putting guns in the hands of dangerous people, you can save thousands of lives. The mythology that the gun lobby has disseminated across this country for decades, that more guns makes us more safe, that's just empirically false.
What do you think about that, Philippe?
At the end of the day, possessing a firearm is a big responsibility. And at the day now that we have mental health issues constantly being at the center of all these shootings, we have to do something to address that. Like I said before, in law enforcement, we would actually coach people to, turn yourself in, basically go in as a self-admitted person. This way you won't be detained in the mental health facility for a great amount of time. And at the end of the day, it comes to bite us back because the person's not really getting the help that they should. And we do have a mental health crisis.
Well, we do have a mental health crisis, but I do want to say, first of all, as a psychologist, I think it's important that we don't stigmatize people who do have mental health challenges, mental health problems. They're the ones who are victimized more often. That being said, going back to the situation of prayers, I think prayers are important, Scott, but I think people want more than prayers at this point. They're really angry. What are we doing in government? What are we doing in federal government that seems to be pulling back from gun violence prevention, from community safety, and so on? So yes, prayer is important. I pray all the time. I'm praying for those families. But what are we going to do after the prayers? How are we going to come together as a society, as politicians, bipartisan action to be able to protect children? How long will we allow them to be collateral damage due to our ideological difference?
Yeah, that's a good question, Scott. What happens after? I mean, what should happen now to stop this?
Well,
from your perspective as a Republican.
Sure. Well, I think the first question you had to ask is, why did it happen? I don't think it happened because of guns. I think it happened because somebody who was clearly suffering from severe mental illness
had access to weapons that would allow them to carry out a terrible shooting.
And the mental illness was encouraged.
But Scott, what about people who don't have mental illness?
I don't think you can tiptoe around this issue. And when you look at the messages that were written in some of the materials and on the weapons that we've seen, I mean, this person obviously was in a dark place.
Obviously.
And I want to know,
obviously.
I'm not sure the government is in that person's life enough to know, but his parents are.
But what
his
about,
family is.
Scott, what about people who don't have mental illness? We have a huge gun violence issue here in the United States. We lead in gun violence.
But the issue today is quite obviously mental illness. And
if you take away the mental illness,
respectfully,
it
I
still leads to
think
guns.
the problem is that this issue can't be isolated in the vacuum of today. And I think, to your point,
I agree.
Mental illness is a cop-out for today, which is also why I believe that, I love how the GOP believes that that's God's only party, right? But you have people of faith on both sides.
I don't believe that. We're all God's children, McCarty.
There are people of faith on both sides who are giving their prayers, but who also believe that action is required. Because you asked the question, what happens after the prayers? Well, in this country, what happens after the prayers is that there's another shooting. And the problem is, it's the damn guns. Like there is a mental health problem in this country. I have a CWP. In fact, I took my CWP class with Governor Nikki Haley. We sat beside each other. We went shooting together. That is not foreign in South Carolina. I believe in that amendment and that right. However, the accessibility of weapons is something we have to deal with. Mental health resources is something we have to deal with. And the fact that people get killed in churches, whether or not it's June 2015 in Charleston, South Carolina, or whether or not it's kids in Minnesota who get killed as a person of faith, it should shake your faith to the core that people are getting gunned down in churches.
Everyone,
and other
thank you very
houses
much.
of worship.
We have to leave the conversation
other houses
there. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back in a moment.
This morning, investigators in Minneapolis learning new information about what led up to the horrific shooting that killed 2 children, injured 17 at the Annunciation Catholic School. They're sifting through what they say are the shooter's hate-filled writings and social media videos. Let's get right to Brian Todd for the very latest on all this. Brian, what do you learn?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop that right there. Bakari said something that I thought was very interesting. I wanted to touch on it. He said, if you're a person of faith, your faith should be shaken to its core. That people are being or getting gunned down. I think that's what he said. And literally, I said, I tried not to say it too loud so you guys couldn't hear me, but I said, no, it shouldn't. Like persecution, especially persecution of the church. We know that this is normal. This is normal historic stuff. We can see it all throughout the Bible. We can see it all throughout history, right? And the church doesn't only thrive through persecution, but grows. People being gunned down, that doesn't mean it's okay. That doesn't mean we're like, oh yeah, like persecution, like yeah, people being gunned down. No, that's not okay. That's still grotesque and disgusting. But I mean, as far as just the time and the way it's happening and the fact that it is happening in a church or it's happening anywhere, it's just a really sad thing. I feel bad for those parents their night's not gonna end the same. Just last night, they put to bed children last night that are not there tonight, and it's like just that thought in itself is it's a pretty disgusting thought. So we should be praying for those families. All right, guys, let's switch gears a little bit, switch moves a little bit. Forbes breaking news: Pam Bondi announces guilty plea for Sinaloa cartel boss El Mayo. So let's take a listen.
Attorney here. We also have our DEA Administrator, Terry Cole, our HSI Acting Executive Associate Director, Derek Gordon, FBI Operations Director, who I'm with every day, Chad Yarborough, U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida, Jason Quinones, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Texas, Justin Simmons, and Acting Assistant AG Matt Gagliotti, who I'm with almost every day as well. We're here to announce a landmark victory for the Department of Justice, our law enforcement partners, and the United States of America. As you've heard, drug kingpin Ishmael Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo, has confessed to a lifetime of crime in service to the Sinaloa cartel, a foreign terrorist organization. Thanks to the relentless work of our prosecutors and our federal agents, El Mayo will spend the rest of his life behind bars. He will die in a U.S. federal prison where he belongs. His guilty plea brings us one step closer to achieving our goal of elimination of the drug cartels and the transnational criminal organizations throughout this world that are flooding our country with drugs, human traffickers, and homicides. Under President Trump's leadership, the Department of Justice is on the front lines of this fight. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with all of our law enforcement partners to dismantle these narco-terrorists. And that's exactly what they are. They are narco-terrorists. El Mayo is one of the most prolific and powerful drug traffickers in this world. His partner was El Chapo. They were co-founders of the Sinaloa cartel. They brutally murdered multiple people and flooded our country with drugs. Their reign of terror is over. He will never walk free again. Over the last 3 decades, El Mayo and his accomplices made billions of dollars, hundreds of millions each year they were making by bringing poisonous drugs into our country. No longer. The Sinaloa cartel initially built their businesses with cocaine, but then under El Mayo's leadership, they turned to heroin, they turned to fentanyl. They purchased fentanyl precursor chemicals from China. They made the drug in Mexico and flooded it into our communities, killing our kids. El Mayo also ensured that the Sinaloa cartel operated and protected its drug trafficking business by relying on extreme violence. They used military-grade weapons and directed hitmen to kill their adversaries. They committed gruesome assassinations, kidnappings, and horrible crimes to maintain discipline within their own organization. He ordered the murders of countless individuals and rivals. Many innocent people died as a result of this as well. El Mayo operated with impunity at the highest levels of the Mexican drug trafficking world by paying bribes to government officials, by bribing law enforcement officers. He controlled corrupt officials and officers who protected his workers and his drug shipments that traveled from Mexico into our country. El Mayo's crimes have been so prolific that in the past 2 decades, He's been indicted in no fewer than 16 federal courts across our country. 16. From Western District of Texas to Chicago to here in the Eastern District of New York. He escaped justice for decades, but under President Trump's leadership, he has finally been brought to justice. Today's conviction is the latest success in the United States fight against deadly cartels and transnational criminal organizations. We've made remarkable progress. Just to give you a few examples, under President Trump's direction, the United States State Department designated the Sinaloa cartel, together with 5 other cartels and MS-13 and TDA, as foreign terrorist organizations due to the serious threat that they pose to our national security. As a result, the DOJ has already charged leaders of the Sinaloa cartel with narco-terrorism and charged alleged members with support and supporters of TDA, MS-13, and CJNG, currently one of the most violent cartels in Mexico. They provided material support to a terrorist organization. We are calling these drug kingpins what they are: international narco-terrorists that invade our country, threaten the sovereignty of our borders, and destroy our communities. They are terrorists, and we will prosecute them like they are terrorists. Since President Trump took office, Mexican authorities have expelled more than 50 high-ranking cartel leaders and other dangerous criminals to our country to face prosecution. More than 50. These are historic numbers that ensure that these criminals will face justice and face justice on American soil.
On American soil.
We now have leaders from CJNG, Sinaloa,
Body, make sure she puts in American soil
in custody. Our prosecutors in the criminal division and the Northern District of Illinois obtained a guilty plea from Ovidio Guzman Lopez, the son of El Chapo, and another leader of the Sinaloa cartel, the co-founder. Just a few weeks ago, on August 14th, we announced criminal charges against 5 cartel leaders and high-ranking members of these united cartels. We will not rest until Americans are safe from these narco-terrorists. Thanks to our law enforcement officers, both here and in Mexico, who often put their lives on the line every single day to protect us and to get these violent leaders off the streets. We are not done yet. At President Trump's direction, we will continue to fight until every single cartel boss is behind bars and on American soil and in American prisons for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Shout out to AG Bondi. Bro, like, AG Bondi, she be on it. Like, she's, like, bro, she don't be playing. Like, when she's ready to, like, put her stats out there, like, this is what we did, this is how we did it, and we're gonna make sure it happens on American soil, in an American prison. It's like, yeah, President Trump, he was trying to make a statement when he put AG Pam Bondi in place. All right, guys, let's switch gears and go over to CNN now. It says, judge sets Friday hearing in Trump's attempt to fire federal governor. This has been some news that's been circulating. Federal governor. So let's take a listen.
The legal showdown over presidential power that is headed to the courts tomorrow morning. Federal judge is set to hold a hearing after Fed Governor Lisa Cook sued the Trump administration in federal court today. She calls the president's efforts to remove her from the position at the Fed, quote, unprecedented and illegal. President Trump says he's removing Cook over allegations that she made false statements on a mortgage application, but is that sufficient cause? CNN's chief White House correspondent and anchor Caitlin Collins is live for us at the White House. Caitlin, how is the White House responding to Cook's lawsuit?
Well, Jake, they've acknowledged that she is challenging her firing, that this is going to now set up this huge legal showdown starting in court tomorrow, where Lisa Cook's just trying to get that temporary restraining order where she can basically stay on the job as this is going to play out. They knew this was going to be a legal battle, Jake. Obviously, we've never seen a president do this in the Federal Reserve Board of Governors history before, and so this is going to be a familiar territory for them because they've done this with other people who have never really been fired by the executive branch before and now are in this position. And so they say they're well prepared for this legal fight, Jake. They do ultimately believe they're going to win out here. And several White House officials pointed out to me that in her lawsuit today, responding to this, that Lisa Cook did not deny the allegations that are being made against her exactly when it comes to these allegations of mortgage fraud. Obviously, that's going to play out in court, Jake, but the White House says as she is prepared to fight this battle, that so are they.
And Caitlin, there's another big controversy going on, this major shakeup at the CDC, Trump firing the CDC director, other top health officials resigning in protest. What are they saying about that and what this could mean for other federal workers and for the health of the American people?
Yeah, Jake, it's pretty remarkable actually to see this playing out because Dr. Monterez has only been the CDC director for about a month now. She was sworn in not that long ago after being confirmed by the Senate. It was just 5 months ago that President Trump picked her for this job after the first person that he had designated to be the CDC director was clearly just not going to get enough support up on Capitol Hill. And so then they picked Dr. Monterez. The president put out a statement at the time calling her an amazing public servant, an amazing mother as well. Secretary Kennedy said that he handpicked her for this job and praised her MAHA credentials. But now she has been fired, obviously, Jake, something that she was even disputing last night, saying she hadn't actually heard from the White House that she had been fired and was disputing whether or not Secretary Kennedy himself could actually do so, really arguing that that can only come from the president himself. And this is obviously a huge question at today's White House press briefing, and this is what the press secretary had to say about it.
It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission.
Now, Jake, I will note, obviously she's referring to the president winning the election there, but she did get votes from Republican senators up on Capitol Hill who voted to confirm her. 51 of them voted not that long ago. And so now, one, obviously there's real questions about who's running the CDC. Yes, they've named an acting director, but it's not someone in a permanent position. There has not been a permanent CDC director since Trump took office, obviously, as they've been having this battle play out. But now, Jake, they have to go through this process of picking someone else, nominating them, and then also getting them confirmed by the Senate, even though the person that the Senate just confirmed has now been ousted from this job. And Jake, I'll say, obviously, we've seen so much of the reporting on the tension behind the scenes between Dr. Monterez and Secretary Kennedy over vaccine approval and what the CDC is saying about that. Obviously, they were just praising her not that long ago, and the White House hasn't explicitly said where they did not align on those areas behind the scenes, but it's clearly led to the resignation of several top officials and potentially more to come, Jake.
All right, Kevin Collins at the White House. And don't miss Caitlin on her show, The Source with Caitlin Collins. Tonight she's going to be joined by 3 of the CDC officials who resigned in protest. That's tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Only 3 CDC officials. Joining us now, former U.S. President.
Resigning in protest is just belligerent.
And former chair of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen. Secretary Yellen, thank you so much for being here. So turning back to the Lisa Cook affair. This is the first time that any president has tried to fire a governor of the Federal Reserve. You said in the Financial Times that this is dangerous and unlawful. What might you have done if this happened while you were chair of the Fed?
Well, as you mentioned, it's never happened in the Fed's entire more than 100-year history that a president has tried to fire a governor. The Federal Reserve Act says that can only occur for cause, and the question here is whether or not an accusation that's been made against Lisa Cook without any charge or opportunity for her to address this allegation, whether or not this represents cause. And I'm not a legal scholar, and this will have to be litigated, but I think it's important to understand the context in which this is occurring. President Trump has expressed his disagreement with the policy stance that the Fed has taken. He believes that interest rates should be substantially lower, and he's mentioned on multiple occasions that his focus is on the high cost of servicing the government debt, and the higher interest rates are, the higher that debt service expense is. It's now close to $1 trillion a year, the second largest item in the budget. But the Federal Reserve Act clearly specifies that the Fed's mandate is to achieve price stability and maximum employment. The goals are set by Congress. The independence of the Fed just means that the Federal Reserve has the ability to decide what settings of monetary policy are appropriate. And President Trump is clearly frustrated with Powell, with the monetary policy the Fed is pursuing. And I see this as part of a larger attempt to gain control of the Fed, of monetary policy, and to put people who agree with him and will follow his views. That's
they
the
always think
overall
that's why he's
goal.
getting rid of somebody.
He's
made no secret of
the
that.
independence of the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, he's made no
He
secret.
has made no secret.
Yeah, the president said
It's
the other day.
important for Americans to understand.
Yeah, he said, I just want to read the quote. The president said, once we have a majority, housing's going to swing and it's going to be great. People are paying too high an interest rate. We have to get the rates down a little bit. The current Fed obviously disagrees, at least as of right now. There are 7 members. There was a resignation a couple weeks ago. If he replaces Lisa Cook, he will have 4 members that are his appointees, not including Jerome Powell, who also was his appointee, although disagrees with them. You say this threatens the independence of the Fed. I wonder, do you think that there are enough guardrails built into the system to protect the Fed?
There are a lot of guardrails. The terms of Fed governors are 14 years. They're staggered. The Fed has budgetary independence. It's answerable to Congress, but the GAO is not allowed to audit the Fed's monetary policy decisions. It was designed to be able to make independent, professional, fact-based judgments, and I believe President Trump wants to change that. It's really important for Americans to understand how dangerous this is. Once upon a time, the Fed was obligated, this was during World War II, to help the Treasury Department finance the outstanding government debt, and it held interest rates low, just as President Trump wants now. And the consequence was very high inflation in the 1950s. There was an accord between the Treasury and the Fed then that said that's not the job of the Fed. And we know that Americans are tremendously concerned about inflation. This was a huge issue in the last election. They want inflation to be low, and the labor market is solid at the moment. Unemployment is very low. Job creation has generally been solid, and we're coming out of a period of high inflation.
Right. And that's the thing about CNN. She says the job market has been relatively solid, but we know that everybody we reacted to so far has said, you see the hiring signs, but no one is actually hiring, which is a foreshadow of something that's coming, which are massive layoffs. So you guys can go over to CNN and finish that up with Jake Tapper. All right, now we're going to switch gears and go over to John Am, and you guys can go check out his channel. He covered Al Sharpton is heated that Trump is saving Black America. We're going to take a listen to this madness. All right, let's see what Mr. Sharpton has been up to.
Pattern that you're only going after black males. Now you're going to fight Westmore. I mean, the pattern here is clear, particularly when the data shows that crime is down in these cities.
This has nothing to do with ethnicity or race. This has something to do with the fact that crime is high in these cities, and you should be concerned about that, Al. You know, when Al Sharpton is speaking, Mr. Sharp-Tongued Al Sharpton, I won't call him Reverend this time, You know that he's trying to divide America. He's trying to race bait and race hustle. He loves to castigate the conservatives. But he'll even tell you in this short clip that I'm getting ready to play that he used to talk about the impact of crime in cities like Baltimore and DC. But now when a white man does it, when a white man with authority and power sends the National Guard to help clean up the mess, Al Sharpton is angry.
Not happy.
Take a look at this.
It's a lot talking about how I've condemned a lot of what was going on in Chicago back in the day and other points. It's not about crime. But when you have this consistent pattern that you're only going after black males, now you're going to fight West more. I mean, the pattern here is clear, particularly when the data shows that crime is down in these cities. And you should be saying, why can't I work with the mayors? The wise political strategy is to start picking off some of these mayors that can say, Trump's not that bad and we're working together. Right. He doesn't want that. And it's clear he's doing it at the expense of people.
Al Sharpton, Mr. Albert, listen, my friend, this is not about racial profiling. This is not about going after black mayors. This has nothing to do with ethnicity or race. This has something to do with the fact that crime is high in these cities, and you should be concerned about that, Al. You see, DC crime dropped since Trump's takeover. Let's take a look at these numbers. 12 straight days with no homicides. What does that mean? That, families are intact. The streets are safe. No one has to lay to rest. A son or a daughter, father or mother, aunt or uncle. Many of these caskets that they will have at some of these funerals because of the high crime in DC.
And a lot of the residents were saying that. They were saying that that's why they were happy about what President Trump was doing. Because as residents that lived there, they couldn't even walk without thinking about getting carjacked or robbed or beat up or mugged. So they were happy about it. And you got people flipping out even there saying, oh, he's Hitler, it's a hostile takeover. No, it's not. Because there's plenty of people that are happy with it.
And in places like Baltimore and Chicago, some of these caskets are large and some are very small. Because oftentimes children are caught in the line of fire. To have 12 straight days of no homicides in DC, that's rare. The last killing in DC was August 13th, as of August 26th. Violent crime is down 25% in the past 2 weeks. Carjackings are down 85%. Robberies are down 42%. Over 1,000 arrests have been made under federal crackdown. Shouldn't we celebrate that?
Some of the residents
Isn't that major?
Yeah.
Doesn't that mean that the streets are cleaning up?
Of the nation's capital.
And that the soft laws that were being pushed in DC are now being enforced? And the criminals are saying, hey, we need a safe haven. The criminals are thinking twice. Is that not what you want? But when you have people like Al Sharpton, he can care less about that. To him, it's all about chaos. It's all about grandstanding. It's all about having his moment on MSNBC to push his false ideologies. See, year-to-date comparisons between 2024 and 2025, so far, homicides are at negative 15%. Assaults with a deadly weapon are at negative 19%. Robberies, negative 31%. Total violent crime, negative 27%. And all crime overall, negative 8%. Hear me, my friends. It's not about race. It's about results. Federal intervention based on crime statistics, not skin color. When citizens in black, white, or Hispanic communities face record carjackings, murders, or drug crisis, any responsible leader must step in. Blaming racial profiling distracts from the real victims of crime. Overwhelmingly, minorities living in these cities. Now, you can't be pro-black, but be angry when black-on-black crime goes down? I mean, come on, Al Sharpton, what are you thinking? And so now I want to show you a video of several people who are thankful and grateful for President Trump sending help to DC. And these are black residents. You know, the people that Al Sharpton disregards. Yes, those people. These are black residents. Let's take a look at this.
Thank you, Trump. You can now come and check out the monument.
And I said last night, this was one of my favorite clips, hands down.
In Washington, D.C. and not get robbed, carjacked, or killed by somebody who looks like me. Wow.
Everybody tripping about Trump releasing the National Guard out there in D.C. Everybody tripping about Trump putting the military in them towns. Well, if you're not a criminal, if you're not out there in them streets doing anything you ain't got no business doing,
preach!
You don't have anything to worry about. If you're not the gunslinger,
all right.
If you're not the street runner,
I mean, he's being honest.
If you're not the one that's out there being notorious,
he's being very honest, and I love that part.
Because if you're not the one putting tears in parents' eyes,
come on, brother,
for no reason,
no reason,
for things, for stuff. If you're not out there terrorizing people, just wreaking havoc on the streets, you don't have anything to worry about.
Come on.
If you're not the problem, don't make yourself the problem. When the military hit them streets and they start,
hey, come on.
You be right there on my porch.
That's right. Stay on the porch.
Nice margarita.
no
sitting there
margarita.
chilling.
That's right, chilling.
See, I told you so. Freaking told you so.
You gotta love it.
President Trump has federalized the police department in Washington, D.C., and people are upset. Liberation Day for Washington, D.C., and I couldn't agree more.
Yep.
The crime in D.C. has ran rampant. And it's about time that people can now
That's right.
and trust in law enforcement out there and be able to walk the streets and not get hit over the head or mugged. I mean, why would anybody be upset with that?
Why?
We just had a young member of Doge beat of young males. I mean, why would anybody have a problem with that? The left is calling him a dictator. They're calling him an authoritarian. A lot of names that they throw, a lot of word salads. Of course, they're calling for him to be impeached. But the people that support him is calling for more. This is what we voted for. And we're very happy. Is making DC safe. He's making America safe. Look at the border. Have we had any other illegal border crossings since he took office? Nah. A big difference from what we've done the last 4 years and who was responsible.
I don't
know who needs to hear this.
So, Al Sharpton, what about these black brothers? Do they matter? Now, I'm the numerous black voices that are speaking out about President Trump sending help to DC and how they have benefited from that. But Al Sharpton, what about them? Do these guys matter to you? Are they brown enough? Hey man, one of the guys blacker than you, Al Sharpton. Are they black enough to matter? Do you care about their well-being? Are they worth protecting? Or are they the wrong color? You know, you say that you are for the black community, but when it's all about those dead presidents for you. It's all about those Benjamins. What about these black men? All right, if you don't want to hear the black men, Al Sharpton, what about this black lady that we're getting ready to show in this same video? Take a look at this.
So President Trump has not even had control over Washington, D.C. for 30 days. And I have on my phone.
And he's allowed up to 30 days. Congress, now after 30 days, Congress has to extend it, but the executive branch can do this up to 30 days.
Video after video showing D.C., specifically Union Station, and how clean and safe it is. People don't understand how big of a deal it is, specifically for Union Station, because there is a bridge, whether it's the bypass, it's either 95, 395, or 495, where the homeless, as well as people who are abusing drugs, as well as the drug dealers, they just squat. It's clean, it's all gone. This was also an underpass bridge where people would throw their waste. So you would drive on the main road, and to the left and right of you is nothing but trash. It's all clean. People don't understand how big of a deal this is, because the Capitol is right there within like a 6 or 7 minute walk. And then also local residents, they did not like walking there, whether in the daytime or the evening. Some people would take taxis just to avoid any type of encounters.
And I'm gonna stop that there. You guys can go over to John's channel and watch the rest. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. We're gonna be back tomorrow for the daily live stream. So until then, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love one another, be peaceful. Peace.